Am I on? I am on. Good. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. We've got a great event lined up for you today. And, I think this is a new paradigm you're going to see, and it's exciting. Before getting into that and talking about it, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to everyone that's been working behind the scenes on Caffeine. So the backstory is probably this event should have taken place in about a month's time. And for a bunch of scheduling reasons, we sort of brought it forward. So it's been very intense. But here we are, and thanks for coming. So let's get going. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dominic Williams, founder and chief scientist of Dfinity Foundation. Dfinity is actually a non-profit organization, but we got some commercial spin-outs coming in areas such as self-writing. And the mission of Dfinity is really to make compute secure, resilient, and sovereign, and also to enable the self-writing internet, which plays into those goals. 250 team members worldwide, was sort of split between the US and Switzerland, and come from a mix of backgrounds. Oftentimes big tech, but also some people like me from early days of crypto. So the big step, I think, with the self-writing internet and self-writing apps more specifically, is that in the future, and really now with this technology, app development is a conversation. So this is really something very different to what we're seeing today with vibe coding or traditional development. So to sort of put this in context, I want to cover the four ways that you can create internet functionality in the form of apps and services. So internet, of course, modern internet came into being in I think, January the 1st, 1983. Back in the early days, the only way to build something on the internet, obviously, was craft coding, as we call it now. And craft coding involves a human being with a keyboard typing out code. And the internet went through various phases. So to begin with, when you created an internet app, you coded the low-level protocols. So that's actually how I started. I started writing in C and creating and managing sockets and things like that that today people don't really think about anymore. Then along came HTTP and the web, and that kicked off a whole revolution and began this kind of exponential growth of the internet. But there were further revolutions that followed. Then there was mobile, then there was cloud, and that kind of changed how we built things on the back end. And now, of course, more recently, perhaps the most profound and accelerative revolution of all, we've gained access to these really powerful AI models. So 2 years ago, 2023, along came, right, clicker, thank you. There is one, thanks. Along came Cursor. And that kicked off a whole new, maybe it doesn't work. It's all right, it's all good. That kicked off a whole new paradigm, if you like, vibe coding. And now with vibe coding, you still have an engineer who's typing out code on his keyboard, but in addition to that, the engineer can issue natural language instructions to AI. And with vibe coding, it's those instructions tend to be in the form like, rewrite this function, something like that. So the latest paradigm is self-writing. And that kind of starts about now. And the change with self-writing is that the entire app lifecycle is a conversation. So rather than having an engineer typing code at a keyboard, you can have a completely non-technical person or a technical person just interacting with AI in a conversation, which is triggering successive updates of the app and successive deploys of the app almost on a continual basis at sort of chat speed. Of course, anyone could implement a self-writing paradigm platform, but today we're going to be talking about the way we've done it, which is this platform called Caffeine, which has an ensemble of AIs inside. The AI writes to the writes code in a language that's specialized for AI called Motoko, and that's that kind of friendly ghost icon you see. And then it's deploying it to ICP-based networks, in this case, the public incarnation of ICP called the Internet Computer. And we'll get to the reasons for that later. So I think what's probably going to be the case with most self-writing platforms going forward is that they utilize new tech stacks that are specialized to support self-writing. Because, in fact, AI, of course, has become very good at coding, but it's not a human. AI is an embodiment of human spirits in a kind of stochastic way, currently at least. And it has its own idiosyncrasies. And in fact, within the context of something like self-writing, it's being asked to do something that no human can do. It's writing code very quickly, and it's also updating and migrating running systems almost in real time. So the best way to do that is to provide AI with a tech stack that is specialized for the needs of self-writing as opposed to vibe coding, which is using a traditional tech stack, or craft coding. So, there we go. Now, you might be wondering, this obviously I mentioned there are 4 ways. Before moving on, I should say that these different paradigms are going to coexist. I don't think craft coding is going to die. I hope not, because I've spent many decades writing code. I think there are always going to be cases where, maybe for reasons of trust, a human being has to write the code. I think probably in the future there won't be much pure craft coding. It'll generally be vibe coding. But these things will coexist with self-writing, and in fact, with Caffeine, we will open up hooks that enable it to be used in a vibe coding pattern. And of course, there are APIs on the Internet Computer that any craft coder can use. So just to be clear, none of that's going away. But you might be wondering what the 4th paradigm is. And it's what we call the fluid web. And you can get a hint of what the fluid web will be by looking at something like Perplexity, which is kind of like a search engine, but it kind of combines all these different sources of data and makes kind of a new informational resource for you. If you can imagine the equivalent of that for functionality, where AI is just generating the user experience on the fly, and that user experience can incorporate and combine functionality from lots of different apps. I mean, if you wanted, you could create a layer, and you could turn the entire existing web into a sort of library of microservices or something, right? And then you could have an AI layer over the top of that on the fly combines that functionality and creates a user experience for you. Like, For example, if you want to book a flight, it could create your own version of Kayak, but with some more telemetry, giving you indications what's the best price and so on. Okay, so let's get back to self-writing. So I think one of the really important things for me is that self-writing app lifecycles can be smartphone conversations. And that's why on either side of this main stage, you can see two screens that are feeding off a phone I've got here on the podium with me. Smartphone penetration is incredible. So by 2022, 82% of the US population was a smartphone owner. And this is a staggering level of penetration if you think about it, because it shows that even older generations have sort of given in and ended up with smartphones. In fact, my mother, she held out till about 10 years ago with a Nokia. At some point, I think my sister forced her to get an iPhone. And there are almost 1 billion smartphone users in China. So extraordinary number of people that can engage in creating self-writing apps. And as one of these charts mentions, there are now more phones than people in the world. So self-writing will democratize app creation and app ownership at absolutely massive scale. And let's try and put this in perspective from the perspective of developers, as I'm sure many of you are. Within the field of Web3, there are only 35,000 specialized engineers. It's probably why so much of Web3 is stuck in the mode of creating meme coins and things like that, right? The shortage of people developing more meaningful tech utility. Worldwide, there are about 15 million. I mean, no one can know the exact number, but this is the best I could get online. 15 million full stack engineers. But there are 5 billion people with internet connected smartphones who could be tomorrow's engineers because they're able to communicate in natural language and interact and engage in these conversations. And essentially, in the future, natural language alone will unlock sort of tech team superpowers. So I think the important point is it's not just that you're being a better engineer as you are with vibe coding. In the future, you're going to have a conversation with self-writing platforms. Under the skin, it'll be an ensemble of different AI models, and they're going to act as a complete tech team. But it's going to be very transparent for the user. I mean, they're just going to have this conversation, and things are going to work. And that's what self-writing for us. Now, what does this mean? Like, how will this change the world? Well, I mean, first of all, I think whenever you get a new paradigm, you get a new tech stack. And if you think back to the early days of smartphones, I actually had a device called an XDA, a Microsoft XDA, back in like 2001, I think, or 2002. I'm getting lost, but maybe it's later. But long story, it was after the dot-com crash, and I ended up brokering a sale of these phones to Cantor Fitzgerald, about 1,000 of them. Anyway, this smartphone is about that big, actually had sat-nav on it and stuff like that. But you know, in the end, like, Microsoft lost the smartphone race because a smartphone is a new paradigm and it needed a new tech stack. And the built-for-purpose tech stacks were the ones that won out. So, of course, in the end, we got Android and iOS and so on. So that's one way that self-writing will change the world. We're going to see new tech stacks, as you're going to see today, that are really being built for AI as much as they're being built for humans. They're being built to support self-writing. But there's more to it than that. It's going to enable new online paradigms. So there's this great quote that I love from Steve Jobs, and he said, "What's important is that you have faith in people, that they're basically good and smart, and if you give them tools, they'll do wonderful things with them." So what happens when you put these kind of incredibly powerful tools in the hands of the everyday person? So here's one of my guesses. It's called hyperlocal social media. Hyperlocal social media, of course, is something like a social network that you create for your extended family that has functionality you couldn't do with a public social network, and maybe a whole lot of special features. So here you go.
I created a hyperlocal social network for my family. My dad posted a dancing video. My sister and I added giant emoji reactions to the video.
So that's, yeah, we'll see that kind of thing. And look, I mean, why? Because, I mean, you couldn't have Instagram where people could come and put great big huge emoji reactions on your photos. It would be defaced. But within the context of an extended family, you could do that. And, you know, here a tween daughter can put giant stupid emojis on her dad's dad dancing video, and it's all good. Okay, so that's one thing. Here's another thing I think we'll see, hyperlocal esports. Actually, one of the problems with esports generally is it's very difficult to prevent people cheating. That's why it's often done in stadiums. You know, it's very easy to hack it, and one of the biggest problems with, you know, public game servers, things like Call of Duty, is there's all these bots, and it's kind of unfair. And this really makes it very difficult to create esports where you might have like a cash prize or a Bitcoin prize or something like that. But if you're just doing it with your mates and you're creating the esports, the hyper-local esports platform for yourself.
I created a hyper-local esports system for me and my pals. We compete playing browser-based games for a Bitcoin pot.
Possible, right? That's another example, I think, of the way things are going to change in the future. The way we see the internet will change. So those are really consumer examples. I think it's heartening to see that, you know, the evolution of the web and the internet and the paradigms that exist hasn't really ossified in the way that we might imagine. It's probably only just getting started. The enterprise, of course, is going to make huge gains in terms of efficiency and velocity. So here's a kind of breakdown. Entrepreneur startup, one-person startup. I mean, you've probably heard a lot about that. I think the one-person startup meme is actually very real. Startup from the developing world, like that's a big deal. Like, I lived in Silicon Valley and Palo Alto for many years, and I can tell you it's much easier being an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley than it is in London, where I came from originally. If you're in the developing world, I mean, very difficult to be a startup entrepreneur, but these kind of tools are going to help people. They're going to democratize access to the tech economy and bring a lot of new talent in. Even if you've got a big team here, you're going to get more velocity. You could use it for personal branding and community, like create yourself a personal branding website and some kind of like social media attached to it. You can use it to design advanced Web3 functionality. So one of the interesting things with the Internet computer is it's powered by a lot of, it's a mathematically created platform, and it's got a lot of very interesting cryptography inside, so it can interact with Web3 blockchains trustlessly, so you can do that. SME, I mean, e-commerce website, tennis booking session. But then you get into the NGO space, and you can imagine it, refugee assistance, a school district fundraising project, but also within the corporate and government environment, there's a lot of applications. And we've been doing early demos to governmental agencies, and they're very interested. Because, of course, it's really hard for them to develop stuff. So there's the obvious applications like CRM and ERP and workflow management and intranet portals. But you can also give like departments a certain level of independence. So we've really been talking about self-writing apps. For us, the self-writing internet is the self-writing app paradigm, which could be built using a sort of dedicated new stack, which is more traditional. But for us, the self-writing internet involves sovereign apps too. So this is how we've done it. I mentioned before, I work at Affinity, and there's a network called the Internet Computer. Huge amount of R&D work's gone into creating this over many, many years. And it's a public decentralized network that creates a kind of cloud. Too much to go into the details, but essentially it combines like a giant virtual execution environment with a mathematically secure protocol. And that mathematically secure protocol actually combines machines, specialized machines called node machines that run all over the world, by independent parties called node providers. And so to recap, what you're going to see today is you've got the Internet Computer, talk in natural language to the Internet Computer, like I want the app to do this, I want the app to do that, and just keep upgrading it by continuing the conversation. And Caffeine is going to be coding and managing that app on the Internet Computer, and then the app is going to be available on a URL. Without getting into the weeds now, you basically update it in draft mode, and then when you're happy, you kind of push it live, and there's a kind of fluidity to the way this works, and the AI can kind of meld different code bases, as you're going to see. Now, a few people have asked is, well, what if I'm from a corporate or government background and I don't want to deploy an app to the Internet Computer? Well, the answer is, there's a product coming called Utopia. Utopia is actually an acronym for Unstoppable, Tamper-Proof, Open Platform for Independent Autonomy. That's why it's called Utopia. And it enables you to create like a private Internet Computer, and you can just run that over existing cloud services if you want. Or alternatively, your own dedicated hardware if that's important and you want to make sure that everything's under your complete control. That's it. I think I was going to, in the future, the internet will be self-writing. And today, you're going to get some real cool demos from me with some more technical details on some of the ways that we've achieved the advances we have. Talking about something called enhanced orthogonal persistence. So we've got this new computer language that essentially collapses the distance between logic and data. Actually, it's a great simplification of software. It's just got a horribly technical sounding name, unfortunately. I'm going to show you, talk about that. I'm going to show you how we can build things just by talking, and then try and as well back up into how exactly that's working, and how this magic's being achieved. Okay, so I'll see you all later, hopefully. Thanks very much. Thanks.